this actually started just as background for other listeners. I reached out to you because I was doing some looking into the Surup runestone, which has
Precisely.
been claimed to be in Basque. And I did wind up reading all those articles, by the way. I did track them down. It was interesting, not persuasive, but like it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. New views on old things may be, yeah, they're always interesting, but not always compelling.
Yeah, but it's not like a Kensington runestone level thing, right? It's like it's within the
Yeah.
realm of this could happen. Um, Let me turn on chat for everybody because chat's off. Um, you know what I mean? Like it's like okay, a runestone in Basque, it's like a 0.05% likely thing, but it's not utterly freaking impossible. So I kind of appreciate like, all right, I had a really out of the box idea and here's my development of it. And it's like, okay, I'm not persuaded, but thanks for developing your really out of the box idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, we talked about that a little bit, and then I said, well, is there anything else you've been working on that you might want to talk about? And you said you had some interesting etymological thoughts on some names. So, what have you got for us on this?
Yes, it all started during my studies of place names, sacred place names, where every now and then I would meet a place name that contained the personal name Vivvil. And in the literature, every now and then I stumbled upon some references to it, and sort of, well, there are many scholars who claim Vivil to be part of a well, sacral personal names. So, in a sense, personal names that have something to do with cultic activity. Uh, if there are several names such as Helgi, and what else do we have other good examples? Well, in the older Futhark, there are many personal names that contain either not necessarily names for deities, but uh, elements that has to do with religious activity,
Mm,
such as Ansugislas, in example. And Ansu being, of course, what later develops into Os, the Esir. Um, and so I wanted to look further into this because Vivil is also an, a word that means beetle. It is this, in essence, the same word as the English word weevil. And in Scandinavian, we also have the word tordivel,
mm.
where the first part of the word is pretty much the same as English turd. So we're turd weevil. These beetles are scarabs, so yeah, dung beetles. Not exactly as magnificent as we think of, the Egyptian versions of it.
Mm.
But they're dung beetles. Yeah, you meet them a lot in the Norwegian forests and Danish forests as well. Um, and so I wanted to figure out, do we really have a name that has to do with something religious or just, a mocking name, really?
Mhm.
So that was my starting point. And it took me a while to go through all the literary sources. There are many place names, and there are a few, not many, but a few runic inscriptions that contain the word or the name Vivil in Old Norse. And there's one in the older Elder Futhark, also sometimes claimed to be, yeah, the progenitor really of Vivil in the form of Wiwila.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was the starting point.
And as far as, by the way, when we talk about personal names that contain sacral elements, are we counting, any name that has a deity name in it? So is Thorstein a name with Because I feel like sometimes these names just become so routinized
Yeah,
that there's not really a sacral connotation to it anymore.
exactly. And it has been a long, ongoing debate about whether a name is more or less just a label, a linguistic label, where the only function is telling people apart,
Mhm.
or if it is also a label where you actually put meaning into it.
Mhm.
Um, Traditionally, there's been, the pendulum has been swinging back and forth. So sometimes we've seen the names as, yeah, it certainly has meaning, and sometimes pendulum has been more or less, yeah, it doesn't have any meaning at all. And today, I think we are more nuanced in the way that we think of it. And in some cases, we could say that it seems to be the case that the content, the etymological content of the name also carries some meaning.
Mhm.
We see it a lot in Scandinavian today, or in any language, I suppose, where let's say you have the name Felicity or Faith or something like that. Um, that could be a way of expressing some ideal, but it could also not necessarily be that. So it depends on who carries it, and sometimes the person who has the name may think of it in a different way that the people hearing the name and calling the person this name may think of it. So it's very it's you can't really put two lines under the answer here, but in some cases we do have good explanations of let's see, we have in the literary sources, we of course have Thorolf Mostrarskeg, who travels from Norway, settles on Iceland, and his original name is Rolf,
Mhm.
but he is a fervent worshipper of Thor, and therefore he is named Thorolf.
Mhm.
And he also has a child. I can't recall if his child is called Grim, and because he also becomes a fervent worshipper of Thor, he also gets the addition Thorgrim.
Mhm.
Can't recall whether that was his child or his grandchild, because it's the same thing happens to the grandchild as well. So there's a family where, at least in the sagas, it's explained as something to do with the religion and what they do. So it's a meaning, a real meaning to it.
Right.
But at the same time, we do see a lot of um, the I don't know how to say it. I've never said this word in English. Dethematic. Pretty much many names in Old Scandinavian and Old Germanic really are put together by two parts,
Mhm.
like Ansur Gislas, where the first part Ansur and the second part Gislas, and these can change. So you can pretty much put, uh, yeah, any. Um, let's say you have a father named Thorstein and a mother named Torgun, and they both have the element Thor. Um, and if they have a daughter, they could, let's say, could be Thorhild.
Mhm.
So they have this Thor, but it could also be that the daughter is called Hildegund,
Mhm.
where the letter part of Thorgun is transferred.
Mhm.
So there's a huge variety of names and a very creative way of putting things together in new ways. So in the old runestones from Viking Age, early Middle Age, we see a lot of diversity in names, uh, clearly showing that also by looking at the combination of names, clearly this has not meant, like in example, Hildegun. Both of the parts, both Hild and Gun means in essence struggle, fight, war, something like that. Um, so it's not necessarily the meaning as such. Could be, however, that it has something to do with warrior ideology. Um, so there are many of the names have themes within the religious sphere or warfare, um, weapons and noise as well. And then, of course, the animals. There are certain types of animals that are often parts of these uh, dithematic names, such as the snake, orm, or the raven, the wolf, of course, and the bear.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so while we have a specialist on this here, just to, I don't mean to belabor this, but just to get people kind of thinking about what goes into names, I I'd be interested in what you think about suggesting that people's awareness of names, probably as much in modern times as then, is kind of optional. If you think about it, you can often see what a name means, but it's not usually at the tip of your tongue when you think about just the name as a label on a person. So, for example, just in the last few minutes, I thought to myself, what does Krister mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I see Christ in it, right? Is it a shortening of Christopher? Maybe, right?
Yeah. Well, you could say it's an old Swedish nominative of Christ.
Oh, okay,
So
sure.
it's literally just means Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that just,
But
but I only just thought about that, right? It had to
right,
occur to me because before that, it was a label for you,
exactly. Yeah.
right? And so I think that, and again, I'm interested in what you would say about this, that the awareness of it is kind of optional. It's at a top level, it's just label for person.
Yeah.
And if you dig a little bit, you can sometimes think, okay, well, I guess this is what this means, but it's not necessarily what a parent intended. Your parents didn't name you
Yeah.
Christ, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
not necessarily, no.
I
But
mean, maybe somebody,
perhaps in some families, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, maybe, I guess, like, I guess that would be
Yeah.
possible. It seems a little odd, um, but I guess also that awareness is sort of triggered mostly by stepping out of the bounds of what's normal. So I might know somebody named Oscar, and if I sit down and think about it, well, that's God spear, which is metal as hell, but
Yeah.
that's not what his parents intended when they named him Oscar,
Yeah.
because it's just a name that's within the realm of sort of normal English names.
Yeah.
But if, and just trying to think of something that's totally out of the box, if you introduce me to your kid and the kid's name is Boggle, but like, well,
Yeah.
that's when the question arises, well, why did you name the kid that? As
Yeah.
long as it's within a certain realm of like we've heard this name before, nobody usually at first thought thinks about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think in Old Norse times, and we have less information about, older Futhark times, but it's certainly in Old Norse times, it seems like there's just a realm of acceptable combinations, you know, Thor plus animal or Thor plus battle or Thor plus
Yeah.
noise or whatever. Like that's just it's normal, so people don't necessarily think about it, but they have the option of thinking about it as the Rolver of Moster Skegg story shows.
Yeah. In personal names, Thor was certainly a very much favored god to name the kids after.
Yeah.
Uh, but it also may be just because it is the requirements of naming your parents or grandparents in the next line may also be a part of it. But there's also been a discussion whether alliteration is more important, so that families prefer to have names starting with the same sound
Mhm.
or same realm of sounds. Um, and yeah, those are more or less the two old ways of naming. Name giving in, yeah, I forget the English term for it, but where you uh, mix names just yeah,
Yeah, I've only ever read
just
it
as you want.
and not said it myself. Is it dithematic or something like that? Is what it
Yeah, yeah.
means? Yeah. Maybe that's how
Um,
people say it. I don't know.
yeah, dithematic, dithematic. I suppose dithematics. I'm not sure, whatever. Yeah. We also see that, of course, before a name becomes a real name, someone must have used it as a nickname or sort of at least a by name or perhaps a hypocorism or something like that. Um, and Vivvil may be one of those names. We should assume, I think, that it would not be a very nice name to give. Uh, of course, you can always argue that our views of what a nice nickname would be may not necessarily be the same as in Old Norse times or even earlier. Um, but that's my guess. When I look at the the younger sources of all the sources we have of the Old Norse corpus, we can see that, in example, in Landnormabok, the name Vivvil mostly goes for slaves.
Hmm.
And in the younger sources, other than that, it seems like it's not exactly in the elite. If you look at older sources, such as the Fornalder sagas, there are some name bearers, Vivvils, that are part of the elite. So does that mean that we've had a shift in how the name was viewed? And that's in essence what I suggest in the article that we're basing our talks about here. I would like to suggest that we have a name that is spelled in the Elder Futhark as Wewilla, and that the early name Wewilla, well, that doesn't mean weevil. We need to make a different etymology. And now the etymology of Wewilla itself has been a very long discussion. For almost a century, scholars have been discussing what's the etymology of Wewilla, together with a handful of names such as Wiwar on the Tune stone and the Brush of Ekeland. There's also both Wiz and Wiz would then be a male's name, and then a female name, Wewio, which seems to be a female moving of Wiz, but we don't really know. But it certainly has, Wewio certainly has this intermediate W sound, as we also find in Wewilla and in Wiwas.
Should we type these down for people? But I just made you co-host so you can share your screen if you just to show people what these look like.
All right. Yes, I can find text if I can remember where I put it.
But I'm sorry, I interrupted your train of thought. I just thought,
Yeah.
well, if we're talking about a lot of names, we should probably show it.
Yes, it
Um,
is a good idea.
but it also just occurred to me, you said it as a name or as a by name, there is bug, that is sometimes a term of endearment. Um, I think I've mostly heard it from parents to their children, and I guess
All
the
right. Yeah.
implication is like you're little, so you're my bug. Uh,
Yeah.
and then
All
of
right.
course the locus classicus of this name in English is Bugs Bunny. Um,
Of course. Yeah.
but I don't know. Like I guess it occurs. I don't think anybody. I don't think it's a given name, right? I think that it's always a nickname. I'm sure Bugs Bunny's real name is William C. Rabbit or something, but uh, I'm not sure what's on his driver's license. I think there was also a mobster in the 20s or 30s the last century who was Bugs something, Bugs Capone or whatever. I don't know. So I
Yeah.
guess, but yeah, it doesn't seem on the surface like it would be particularly, oh, Bugsy Siegel. King.
Bugsy Siegel. Yeah,
Uh,
I have no idea who Bugsy Siegel is, but
I don't know. The
yeah,
name somehow it crossed my ears at some point, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem to be particularly high value, the same way that calling somebody Thor this or Raven that, or actually,
mm,
it occurs to me in younger Futhark, I feel like in Swedish inscriptions, you see a fair amount of Froy. Froystein seems to be a name that shows up in a few of them.
yes, you do. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't think that there are any gods that are positively associated with insects or any stories that seem to point toward any sort of positive attitude toward insects.
Yeah, there's one where Loki becomes a fly, or
Yeah,
like
I guess he does it
yeah,
twice.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
because there's in Skullscappermaul during the forging of Mjolnir, and then in Sorlathalter he turns into a fly to go into Freya's
Yeah,
house, right? Yeah, so I guess he turns into a fly twice. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. So does that mean we should start viewing Vivvil as some sort of a cultic functionaire in devotion of Loki? I don't think that's
Yeah.
where we're going here.
I don't know, but but it's true. I hadn't thought about that previously. That there is a function for an insect. I mean, it's not a weevil, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Huh. Okay.
yeah. But the thing is that the uh, the name Vivvil, which is on the Veblungsnes runes. Well, it's not really a stone. It was written on a piece of the cliff hanging out towards the sea. Unfortunately, scholars tried to break it free from the cliff, and it sank to the bottom of the fjord. And so far, we haven't been able to find it or recover it. So it's down there somewhere. We don't know what shape it is, but the inscription of itself is lost. However, there was made a cast before it was lost, so we do have the inscription, and there are also some really nice photos taken of the cliff itself. And Wiwilan is, well, it's spelled Ek Irilas Wiwilan, which means I, Ek, the Eril of Wiwila. So Wiwilan is a genitive case. Yes, and there's a bind rune of on Ek, the first rune here. Wiwila must be a not necessarily a diminutive.
Okay.
Diminutive means like a like small boy, or smaller version of whatever you're talking about. So one suggestion has been that it's we was, that is the basis of the name, and then you add an ilaz behind that to make it sort of the small version of it. That would be the diminutive. It could also be that the ila suffix itself is more like a hypocrism, something you add to a denotation of someone you like, more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would
And
make Attila like dear daddy,
yes,
not little daddy.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Dear father, or
Yeah.
dear papa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the development of the sounds in Wiwila would develop into Old Norse either Ili or Vili. If if you use the sound laws as mathematical rules, then you would expect Ili or Wheelie. We didn't get that, or at least we can't see that we did. Vili in itself would be an interesting name. We're not going into that here. So if we are to see Wiwila together as in a group together with Rivil, we need to find good reasons why these sound rules have not been followed.
Hmm.
And before I started this, Some scholars have been giving different arguments. Günther Müller would be the one who did it, made the most of it. And he made interesting observations about characters in Fornaldarsagus that have let's take the example of the Rolf saga Rolf Kraka och Kappahans, where the young Roar and Helgi have to flee away because their father is murdered by their uncle. And they flee to the island called Vivvilsøy together with their warden, Vivvil. And their uncle he's unable to find them because his seers can't see through all the smoke and fog surrounding this island, indicating that Vivvil has some sort of power that goes beyond, just when you're able to hide your island from the king's seers, then there's some magic going on there. And there's also a sequence when the king, so Roar and Helgi's uncle, comes to Vivvilsøy, and Vivvil tells these young princes to go by the names Hop and Hu, which are the names of his dogs, sort of making a parallel to Volsung Saga, where Sinfjotli is sort of having a transitional ritual, living in the forest together with his uncle, father, incestuous thing going on there. Not important for this conversation, but Sinfjotli also lives partly in the wild, secluded from everyone else, getting ready to avenge the deaths of his father's the father's and mother's siblings and his grandfather, also in the shape of wolves at times. So there's a parallel there as well.
Mm-hmm.
In a different saga, Thorstein Vikingssonar, there's also a quite interesting, clearly mythological start to it all, where you have like the explanation of why Hålogaland in Norway is called Hålogaland, because there's a local jarl who's called Logi, and often called Hålogi. So it's an explanation why the entire region is named after him. We very often find this, like in Saxo, where the first Danish king is called King Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have this. It's a very common thing. I can't recall the English term for it, but you find it everywhere. You have it in the Bible as well. So it's a very common way of folk etymology, really. But this Hålogi, the jarl, he has two daughters. They're both named their names both have meanings. It means glows, like the embers, really, and fire. So that's the theme. Also, the wife of Hålogi she's called Glud. The children are called Asa and Emirja, and Hålogi means the high flame as well. So there is clearly a theme in the meaning of all these four people. And these two daughters, they have two suitors who are also two brothers. And these two brothers are called Veseti and Vivvil. Now, Veseti we also know as, it means the seat of the sanctuary, really. And then we have Vivvil. as a brother to this one. So it would be tempting to see that there's some sort of connection there as well within, that there would be a semantic, meaningful connection between the meaning of the names. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so that's, yeah, I think that those are fairly good arguments, really, for why you would sort of have a name that really means beetle, but representing something from an older time, older layer of sagas, but with a name that you know loses its colorfulness, or at least its a status, I suppose,
Hmm.
in time.
Something
Because
like analogously, bride groom, where there's an old word goom for man, and
yeah,
everyone's forgotten that, but the word is reanalyzed as containing a word that people do remember, groom.
mm, mm, yeah,
Yeah, interesting. So the notion then being that Vivvil, certainly on the surface analysis in the Old Norse period, is beetle,
yeah.
but that there's another name that means something different that's sort of merged with that.
Yes, that I do have plenty of arguments that I add. Some of them are very linguistic, like when do we expect the merging of the sound w together with the sound f, which is in Vivvil, because it's spelled with two different, well, etymologically different sounds, but somewhere in the let's say before 1200, these two sounds merge. And so today in Scandinavian languages, we can't really on the surface tell whether something originates as an F or a W sound historically. They all sound like the, like the yeah, the sound really.
Yeah.
Um,
But when that happened is really, really, really hard to determine. There's there's a skaldic poem that people sometimes point to that's by a poet from the 1000s who rhymes Levi, life in the dative, with
mm,
the woman's name Svivor.
mm,
So that looks like at least an Icelander who has that merger then.
yeah,
Uh, but like it's so hard to tell because actually they're pretty good. Well, I don't know if you agree with this. I think it seems like they're pretty good in the 1100s and 1200s at least at keeping the spelling of those two apart.
yes, yeah. Um, in general, you could see that, yeah, as you say, they're quite they're good at keeping these two spellings apart until, well, I think in manuscript texts it doesn't really happen before, yeah, 1200 certainly. But we do have some weird cases in the runic uh, corpus where, in example, Ivar is spelled with an F,
Mhm.
which would be a bit strange. Let's see, do I have a dating of this runestone where Ivar is used? Mm,
Well, and this is surely different in different regions, um,
precisely.
and that's going to be
Yes.
really hard to track. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, and it seems like, and again, I'm interested in your take on this. It seems like an early younger Futhark, they clearly haven't merged.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think of something like I was just earlier this year with Henrik Williams at Sparlusa, and it still uses the B rune for what would later be written intervocalic F.
Yeah.
which strongly suggests they're still pronouncing that probably actually as like a bilabial voiced fricative or
Yeah,
something, right?
exactly. Yeah. And that's super interesting to use the runic corpus as a source for social linguistics. Of course, it's very difficult because we don't have that many, but by looking at them, we can clearly see that some features show up in Norway first, whereas most features show up in Denmark first, and then there are some showing up in Sweden. Well, not necessarily first when I think of it. Sweden is, at least many parts of Sweden, fairly uh, yeah, lags a bit sometimes. Yeah, it's interesting to to sort of see the differences in when they changed the runes. An example, you on the Rök rune stone, you have the O rune, which is like the older Futhark O rune, which I think is very cool to have that late, because if you look to Danish rune stones in the same time, the O rune has been gone for over 100 years at that time. But it's cool. And the Z rune that changes into becoming a Y rune, that happens in Norway first. So
Hmm.
clearly the complete merging of Z and R happens in Norway first,
Mhm.
judging by the runic evidence.
Yeah, but then of course it gets really hard to know, does the sound change happen way before the graphic change? And
Yeah,
people just remember a traditional distinction and like how long can you do that? Because you can do that actually for centuries
you can.
If English is any indication, because
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very juicy topic in itself.
yeah,
Like where the unwritten rules and conventions of how to spell things. Like why does everyone agree that you can skip n in front of like
right,
uh, velars, an example. Super interesting.
right,
So there's some rule to it, but yeah, conventions really, writing conventions that everyone agreed upon apparently.
right. But back on the main track, what could be an alternative explanation for that we was or we will name in
Yes.
older?
Well, the the problem with these names is that you have this. It can go back to roots, Indo-European roots that are homophonous. So they carry, you can say, the sound weak or wake. Um, they have many different meanings, three meanings really. One of them we being to to make something holy, and one of them being to struggle or to make war. You have it in Old Norse vigya. You know, that, that's the holy one. Vigya is to make something sanctuary or holy, and then vig means battle, camp. Um,
Yeah.
and yes, good idea,
So, uh,
precisely.
yeah.
And then there's also a suggestion that it could go back to a meaning something like rugging back and fro, as moving. Yeah, rugging, I suppose, would be the best translation of it.
Would that be the root in this verb?
Yes, would be. Yeah. And vikja in Old Norse would be like some parrying or evade. I think when you move away
Are,
from something
are we talking
swiftly.
about, are we talking about this?
No, the
We're
upper
talking about this one. Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, so the last word does not really make sense in a personal name
hmm.
because we don't have any other personal names containing this meaning. Whereas both battle and religion we see a lot in personal names. So in principle, you could say that we was and the other names in this group, we will as well, could mean either someone who consecrates um, or yeah, something to do with battle.
Yeah, battler, something like that.
Battler,
Yeah.
yes, fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, that would make perfect sense. And the development of the sounds as well, I think, is also fairly well. Um, you know, there's been made good enough explanations of where that derives from, the roots and this yeah developments through times. So it would make sense that um, that we yeah could suggest at least the first two etymologies, Vigya or Vig, either the consecrator or the battler.
Where is the second W coming from?
Yes, that. Let's see if perhaps I can find it in my article. Let's see.
Name etymologies can be so difficult too because names can be, well, they can reflect an earlier layer of time than the layer of time in which they're used, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. In this case, it would probably go back to an Indo-European suffix, the wa suffix.
okay.
So the wig, uh, yeah, with the G and the wa suffixation. And the thing is that, yeah, that would make the personal name Wigwa. So where's this G?
Are we talking
Why
about
don't
maybe something uh like this?
it would be the wake with the K.
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
it's not
Yes.
okay. So like weak.
That would develop into wake. So the K would turn into H
Well, this would
exactly.
also do this.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you have the accent in Proto-Germanic, it could usually seems that it would be on the first syllable, but if the accent is on the second syllable, the H would turn into a g, so
Hmm.
that would be perceived as a G sound.
So we're talking about the difference between basically this versus this.
Precisely.
Okay. So then we would get and understand this is a fricative.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you have a G between and before going I, and yeah, between an I and a W, that G generally disappears.
Hmm.
That's a pattern in Germanic. So then you end up with Wiwa
Hmm.
as the root. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly buy that. And as you say, either root makes sense.
Yes.
Is it the consecrator or the fighter? And either one is a perfectly normal-ish Germanic name. Yeah.
Yeah. And also in the latest edition of the etymological dictionary of the Norwegian language by Lindemann, Bjorvann, and Lindemann. Yeah, it's called Våre arvor. This really good book. They have a suggestion of how to merge the two meanings consecrate and battle as being related to each other, seeing the consecrator as something that has developed from the meaning of battle or fight.
Interesting. Is, by the way, do you know if there is a way I could get my hands on that? Because I've got the 2001 edition, which
Yeah,
is, they've done a lot since then.
they have.
And if you have a Norwegian IP address, I think you can get a lot of these things, or just a Norwegian address, I think you can get a lot of things. I haven't figured out how to get those.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to cheat with the VPN if possible, if it's
Yeah, probably.
legal where you're from.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise buy it next time you're in Scandinavia or
Yeah.
get it shipped.
Well, right now it's really hard to get stuff shipped. So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Just wondering if you knew any special tricks to getting one's hands on this because I do think they do really good work. And
Yes,
obviously,
absolutely. Yeah.
24 years of updates is a lot to be missing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Kendra asks, what is the etymology of the word for the beetle?
The beetle. I never thought about that. Oddly enough, it would make sense that I would have gone through it at the same time, but it's not a shared etymology. Uh,
Let's see if Watkins says anything about it. Um, it is not one of the words in his American Heritage Dictionary of Indo-European Roots. But by the way, folks, if you're interested in Indo-European etymologies for English, or actually lots of other languages, but he mostly focuses on English words, this is an interesting little book. Let's see what Wiktionary says. That's my next go-to.
uh,
Because
could
people
be in it could be an Elas no beetle. I
are,
don't know the English old English versions of this word, but could be in the first root could be to bite,
oh, you're talking about
perhaps.
beetle. I was thinking about weevil. Um,
The weevil. The yeah. All right. Yes, that would be um, Weibilas.
this, yeah. So something
Yes.
related to weave, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Again, this movement of rugging back and fro because the big fat beetles
Uh-huh.
do it slowly, move back and fro. Yes, that's yeah, that's the
But then beetle, yeah, as you said, bite, the bite root.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm always skeptical of trusting the etymologies on Wiktionary, but
Well, it's not the,
it's a good start,
yeah, it's
and
not,
then you can get some good references and check it out and dig further.
it's just like anything on the internet. It's sometimes good and sometimes it just depends on who did it.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's very responsible and sometimes it's like citation needed, man.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but you have to kind of use your own judgment with it. But it's better than like I don't think there's some alternative free resource online that's better to direct people to.
No,
It's
uh, no, not when you want to start off with the current modern version of the word.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. There's other resources and of course there's published resources that I like better. I mean,
yeah,
Anatoly Lieberman has an etymological dictionary of English, which, I love Anatoly to death. He's very idiosyncratic, but it's good. I mean, like he's thoughtful, even if you don't
yeah.
always want to agree with everything he says. Calvert Watkins, uh, very good, although he doesn't cover every single word. This is a pretty thin book. It's a pretty interesting derivation of English words from Indo-European roots. For Norwegian, as you said, våre arve ord. And, I don't actually like, um, although you can find it online, I don't actually like Jan de Vries Etymological Dictionary of Old Norse. I don't
No, yeah,
I don't know what
I
you think. Part of it, like admittedly, I don't like him, but also every single time that I'm looking for the etymology of an Old Norse word, and I think, well, I've hit a wall. I can't find anything more. Let's see what De Vries says. Every single time I look in his book and he says, I don't know. So it's like it's never helpful. It never gives me information I can't get somewhere else. There's also Islandsk Orðsifjabók.
yes, that one is actually all right. It's old,
Yeah.
but can be very useful.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It sometimes has something that I can't find somewhere else. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Hmm.
Sam says, pure supposition because I'm not a specialist, just a what if kind of academic. This is a little bit putting me in mind of the ways that Nahuatl identify butterflies with warriors. So perhaps beetles and fighters could be connected that way, but the idea of them weaving or swarming might also link. Speculative, but yeah, I mean, you can't know.
Yeah, that's one you sort of raising an interesting question because very often uh, uh, I go through place names, in example, doing a lot of place names. It's part of the PhD that I'm currently trying to finish, and it's very clear that people of onomastic descent, so people who do place names for research, don't always know an awful lot about, let's say, uh, fauna or flora.
Hmm.
And when you're trying to make good explanations of why a place name is named so, it may be a good idea to actually know the typical, flora of the area, in
Sure,
example.
sure.
Yeah. And the same goes with etymologies. Sometimes you see etymological explanations where if you know something about this bird that you're trying to say something about, then you would know that it should be a different sound because that's the sound they make.
Uh-huh.
And it would be in w instead of a b, in example. But yeah, minor details. But to some people who are into owls, in example, could be annoying.
Is there a specific etymology? Something triggered this. Is there a specific etymology for a place name that you saw that
No, well, not well. Yes, more or less. My one of the articles in my PhD will be a big row with Norwegian place name research since it started, really. But that's a whole different story, I think.
okay.
Uh, it could be a long rant.
Okay. Well, if you ever want to come back and do that long rant, I'm sure we'll listen to it.
Yeah, let's do it when I'm done.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Any other thoughts you want to share about Weewalas, Vivvil?
Right. Yes. Let's do a little recap
Okay.
of the trains of thought that I did in my conclusion of the article. The article is available free online. It's in Norwegian, Nynorsk. Very good opportunity for everyone to learn Norwegian. Am I right, Jackson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, the conclusion is that I suggest that in earlier times we've had this, yeah, the elite using names such as Wiwas, Wewio, Wiwilan. Clearly they're part of the elite. I mean, Wiwila has a Irilas, so he must be pretty high up in the social strata. And they have these names, probably the same name that was given to the name bearer of the person in the saga of Rolf Kraka, an example. But because of social linguistics, let's call it that, there's been a mix-up between the word for Wiwilas or Wiwila on one part, so the name on the Veblongsnes runic inscription, and the word meaning beetle on the other hand. At one point, these two names must have been very similar in pronunciation.
So something like Proto-Germanic Weevilaz,
Yeah,
which is
it's not it's a weak yeah, exactly, without the z.
this versus, and understand this is a fricative this.
Yes.
Now I don't remember how to spell the bug name, but
Yeah, we will. That's correct, I think.
okay.
Yeah. Um, in particular, in the period where the uh, the development of the merging between the fricative b sound, which would be something like v, very similar to the w sound,
Mhm.
ba or v and wa, very similar. Um, of course, there's an issue with the class, the grammatical class, because Wiwila is a weak masculine noun, and Wiwilas is a strong, uh, basically meaning that they have different grammatical endings. They follow different grammatical patterns depending on yeah, which case they'll be. It's going to sound different in the grammatical ending.
Hmm.
So it would mean that the mix-up would allow for even the grammatical category to also mix a bit. That's a bit of an uncanny obstacle for my suggestion. I have to consent because it's yeah. I don't know of any other examples of that where it just suddenly changes grammar.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I can think of words that have changed from weak to strong, but there's usually a little bit of a trace of it, like raven, right? Because the N in raven or raven is originally from the N stem, right?
mhm.
That's not part of the root, right? In German, it's still
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
Baba, but in
yeah,
English or Scandinavian, it's got the N that's originally from the stem that's become part of the root. But you don't
yeah,
see a trace of that here. It doesn't become
yeah. And
Weeviln or something.
mm, yeah, so that's a bit of an annoying part of it. But if we accept the suggestion, then my further suggestion then would be that after a while, where it's very clear for most people that Vivvil means beetle, then uh, people stop using it in the high elite society. And that sort of corresponds to when we see these people in the written sources named Vivvil in the sort of yeah, high social strata. It sort of stops in the, of course, it's super difficult to date sagas, but approximately 800s.
Hmm.
That's, well, after that, we don't really see Weevil in the high social um, strata. So from then on, it shows up in a runic inscription in the middle of nowhere. You would almost think of in a sort of a small cave where it says Weevil lived here, indicating that he's, I don't know, like running away from something or living as a hobo in the outback, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, there is a Swedish runestone where it's very difficult to read all of it. So it's unclear what he does and who, yeah. So there's a possibility that we actually do have someone in the high social strata later on in the runic corpus. But Landnormabok, it's slaves,
Mhm.
the weevils that you kick at when you want things to go faster, shout at, and so on. Yeah, so more or less by social linguistics, it's a personal name that loses its status, possibly because the meaning changes. It's not obvious that it means either battle or fighter or the one who consecrates anymore.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
think it's a really interesting story, and you can imagine such a thing happening with any number of.
absolutely.
I mean,
It is.
I'm sure it's
It,
happened plenty of other times. This exact
yeah,
process.
yeah, yeah. It happens. Things like this happens, as you say, all of the time. It is, however, super difficult to prove.
Mhm.
And so this is a speculative suggestion.
Mhm.
I can't say that I've proved it because it's a suggestion. And I must say that during my the process of writing this article, I really understood why it took almost a century for this sort of conclusion to be made, and even I can't really fully conclude because it's almost impossible. We have many homophonous roots, possible etymologies, and we don't always know. In particular, in the case of Wiz and Wivvil, the two people who are both mentioned in the same runic inscription on a very nice brooch found in Norway, the Eikeland brooch. It, it's yeah,
That's this, right, for folks who want to look that up.
yes, exactly.
And what is
Uh,
the inscription on the cave? What is that called? Or do you know what the catalog number of that is?
it is a storheader. Let me see. I can probably find it really quick. Oh, um, hmm.
Sounds interesting. I haven't ever heard of it.
Yes, the signum is N198M.
N198N or just N198?
So N198M.
M.
That's the signum. Yeah, M for merchandise or something. I
Oh,
don't know.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I had never heard of that one. And
yeah,
it's I was trying to think if there was any sort of parallel that I could just make up where you could imagine two English words that are separated by just one little sound, where one is high
yeah.
value and one is low value. And I couldn't think of one right off the top of my head. But it just where one sound change makes two words sound too much alike, and all of a sudden it becomes unacceptable.
Mm.
Uh, I'm sure 5 minutes after this, I'll think, there it is. But
Uh,
my dumbest example or the closest thing to an example that I can come up with is maybe, if King and Kong
yeah,
merge. So
yeah.
you don't want to call people King anymore because it sounds stupid, because now it sounds like Kong, and it's like, well, so people don't remember that this used to be a different sound. I don't know. It's a bad example because they're not potentially
Yeah.
not potentially going to merge. But anyway, I really appreciate your time and talking to us about this. It's a really neat article. I'll also can you share a link with it for those who want
Yes.
to read it?
Let's
There's
see.
plenty of folks
Um,
here can certainly read.
Yeah, it's a part of an entire book about cultic functionaries in pre-Christian society.
Some other neat articles in there too.
Yeah,
Um, you could just put that in the chat, or just send me the link. You sent me the whole document. I guess I could just share the whole document on Patreon. I don't think anybody would
yeah, yeah.
feel
But
bad about that.
No, it would be all right, but let's see. In the chats here.
Often with academic publishing, it's either here's a PDF or pay $400.
Yeah, not this time. Here you have an entire book for free.
Okay, I
Yeah,
will.
it's all of the it is. I think all the articles are written in Scandinavian. So, but as a, again, just a good opportunity to learn Scandinavian if you haven't already.
Yeah, a lot of folks here can read it, and others are working on it. So,
Yeah,
okay. Well, I appreciate your time very much, and maybe we can have you back to rant about something else in the near future.
would be
And
nice. Yeah,
I always enjoy it, and wishing you good luck with the continued PhD work.
thank you, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, mine too, sir. So, for now, thank you, and all the best to you. All the best, everybody.
Yeah, you too, and Merry Christmas when it comes to that.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.